Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to jump headfirst into the world of stem cells.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty incredible. And
Are.
we've got a ton of info to cover today, all pulled from the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine.
So where I am.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to explore, not only the amazing potential that stem cells have to treat all kinds of diseases,
Right.
but also like all the real-world hurdles that researchers are facing, as they try to bring these therapies to life.
Yeah.
So, quick question to kick things off for our listeners. Have you ever thought about the fact that stem cells can do way more than just transplants?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we usually think of, right?
Right.
But there's a whole lot more going on.
And
We're going to
that's
dive
right.
into all that.
Yeah, most people, when they think about stem cells, immediately their mind jumps to transplants.
Right.
And it's true. Like a really important application is replacing damaged tissues. But what's really fascinating is that stem cell research goes way beyond just replacing tissues.
Right.
By studying stem cells, we can actually understand diseases better.
Huh.
We can come up with new drugs.
Okay.
And we can even test the safety of medicines.
Wow.
All of this benefits human health, even if we're not actually transplanting the cells.
So you're saying that stem cell research is helping people,
Yes,
even if those people never actually receive like a stem cell transplant?
exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any specific examples that you can think of where this is happening?
Sure. So researchers who are looking at how heart muscle cells develop from stem cells
Okay.
might be able to figure out ways to help the heart repair itself after someone's had a heart attack.
Wow.
Which is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Also, stem cells are used in the process of developing and testing new drugs.
Okay.
So that means they play a big role in making sure that those drugs are safe for everyone.
It seems like stem cell research could impact pretty much any disease you can think of.
That's the really amazing thing about stem cells is that theoretically, they have the potential to make a difference in any disease because researchers can study every single type of cell.
That's incredible.
CRM actually has a ton of work in this area.
Uh-huh.
They've got pages on their website devoted to specific diseases.
Wow.
And they also have this database where you can search for the research that they're funding.
Oh, wow.
So if anyone listening is interested in learning more about how stem cells are being used to tackle a specific disease,
Right.
definitely check that out.
So I'm super curious about the treatments that are actually available right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what can people actually get?
So while there are a lot of promising stem cell therapies that are currently being tested,
Okay.
only a small number have actually gotten the green light from the FDA,
Right.
like fedratinib for myelofibrosis and glasdegib for acute myelogenous leukemia.
Okay.
Those are two therapies that CRM actually funded in their early stages.
So you're saying that without stem cell research, those two treatments might not even exist today?
That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great news for patients who have those conditions.
Absolutely. Are there any other stem cell treatments that are like currently available?
Well, the most common one is actually bone marrow transplantation,
Okay.
which has been super valuable for people dealing with blood cancers.
Like leukemia?
Exactly like leukemia. So what
Okay.
happens in a bone marrow transplant is that doctors take blood-forming stem cells from a donor's bone marrow
Right.
and they put them into the patient.
Okay.
It's been a real lifesaver for so many people.
Wow. And so this has been like the mainstay of treatment for
Yes,
leukemia and other blood cancers for
for a long time.
a long time.
And there's a lot of ongoing research looking into how bone marrow transplantation could also be helpful for treating autoimmune diseases.
Okay.
And even in making organ transplants work better.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like bone marrow transplantation is kind of leading the charge,
Mm-hmm.
while a lot of other adult stem cell therapies are still being worked on in the lab. It's super important to like be aware of the potential of these therapies,
Yeah.
but we also have to be realistic, right?
Right?
Like it's not all sunshine and roses.
Absolutely.
There's always the possibility that things won't pan out the way we hope, or even that there are people out there who are trying to take advantage of others.
Unfortunately, you're right to bring that up.
Yeah.
There are clinics,
Hmm.
both overseas and increasingly here in the U.S., that are offering these stem cell therapies that are unproven and potentially dangerous.
Wow.
And these clinics are really exploiting people's hope for their own profit
Yeah.
without any scientific evidence to back up their claims.
That's terrible. Are there specific risks that people should be aware of with these unproven treatments?
There have been cases where patients have actually died,
Oh, God.
lost their sight, or gotten serious infections from these treatments.
Wow.
So it's really crucial to be careful and skeptical
Yeah.
when you hear about these miracle cures.
It sounds like the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Applies here.
Yeah, developing safe and effective stem cell therapies,
Right.
that takes real scientific research.
Yeah.
It's not about empty promises.
Right.
And this research takes time.
Right.
Which leads us to another really important point, is that these new therapies, they don't just appear overnight.
So why does it take so long to go from the lab to an actual patient?
Well, developing a new stem cell therapy is kind of like a multi-step obstacle course.
Okay.
You know, you have to be super careful at every stage.
Right.
So first, you need to have the right type of cell.
Okay.
Which sounds simple, but it's actually quite difficult.
Uh-huh.
Then you've got to put those cells through a battery of tests
Yeah.
to make sure they're actually doing what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And that they can integrate into the body safely.
Okay.
And before you can even think about testing the cells in humans,
Yeah.
you have to make sure that they're safe
Uh-huh.
by using animal models.
Oh, I see.
So it's a time-consuming process for sure. But it's absolutely essential to ensure that these therapies are going to be effective and safe for people.
So basically, scientists are trying to recreate, like, the incredibly complex processes of the human body
Yeah.
in this controlled setting.
Right.
And that all in order to improve somebody's health.
That's right.
I bet there are a ton of different ways that they're trying to get stem cells to become like the different cell types that are needed for all these different therapies.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Scientists are really trying to replicate the signals that stem cells receive during natural development. And that process is called differentiation. And it's so complicated.
Yeah.
Think of it like a really intricate dance routine.
Okay.
If a signal is giving in the wrong order or at the wrong time or even at the wrong dose, the cells might not mature the way they're supposed to.
Oh, wow.
Or they could even become the wrong type of cell altogether.
So if even one tiny step is off,
Yeah.
the whole routine gets messed up. I'm guessing that GR is also funding research into this area.
Yes, a lot of their research is focused on getting highly pure populations of mature cells.
Okay.
Because the purer those cell populations are, the
Yeah.
less likely it is that something unexpected is going to happen.
Right.
And that could actually speed up the process of creating new therapies quite a bit.
It makes sense that if you have purer starting material,
Yes,
the outcome will be better.
exactly.
So let's imagine that researchers have actually successfully turned these stem cells into the type of cell that they need.
Okay.
What comes next?
Testing.
Oh, of course.
They have to make sure that those cells not only function the way they're supposed to,
Yeah.
but also that they can integrate into the body without causing any problems.
That makes sense.
So, for example,
Yeah.
if they're using embryonic stem cells to make insulin-producing cells to treat someone with diabetes,
Right.
they need to be absolutely certain that those cells will actually produce insulin once they're transplanted.
It's like you're making sure that the car engine is working properly before you actually try to drive it anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a crucial step.
Okay, so how do they actually test those cells?
Scientists often use animal models
Okay.
that are designed to mimic human diseases.
Okay.
So they'll put the differentiated stem cells into these animals and then watch to see how the cells behave, whether they integrate correctly into the surrounding tissues,
Okay.
and most importantly, if they actually help to treat the disease.
So they're essentially creating like a little mini version of the disease in an animal.
Yep.
And then they're seeing if the stem cells can fix it.
Exactly.
Do those animal models always perfectly reflect what's going to happen in a human?
That's a really good question, and the answer is not always.
Oh.
While animal models are super important for research,
Right.
they don't always perfectly replicate human diseases.
I see.
Like if you take a mouse with cystic fibrosis, for example,
Yeah.
they may not have all of the same symptoms as a human who has cystic fibrosis.
So the results from an animal model might not completely translate to what would happen in a person.
That's right.
So I'm guessing researchers are using multiple animal models
Yes.
to kind of account for those differences.
Exactly. They often use several different animal models to try and figure out how the cells are likely to behave in people.
Right.
And by doing that, they can minimize the risk when those therapies eventually reach human trials.
That makes sense. Speaking of risk, we should probably also address the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
which is people's concerns about tumor growth
Right?
and immune rejection
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to stem cell therapy.
Absolutely. Those are two big questions.
Huge. So first, how likely is it that stem cell therapy could actually cause tumors to grow?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
So embryonic stem cells have the potential to form tumors called teratomas
Okay.
when they're implanted into the body.
Right.
And these teratomas contain a mixture of different cell types,
Right.
which is obviously not ideal.
Yeah. That sounds kind of scary.
Yeah.
How do scientists prevent this from happening?
Well, before transplanting the cells,
Yeah.
scientists very carefully mature the embryonic stem cells into specific adult cell types.
Okay.
So basically, they're guiding them down a very specific path so they don't grow in ways they're not supposed to and create those mixed up tumors.
So they're controlling the differentiation process
Yes.
very specifically.
Exactly.
So that you end up with the cell type that you want.
That's right.
And nothing else.
Right.
That's good to know. What about immune rejection? I know that's a huge problem with organ transplantation.
It is.
Is it the same for stem cells?
It's similar to organ transplants.
Okay.
When you put any foreign tissue into the body, including stem cells,
Right.
there's always a risk that the recipient's immune system will see it as an invader and try to attack it.
Right.
That's why people who get organ transplants have to take those immunosuppressant drugs.
Okay, so how does immune rejection play into stem cell therapy?
Well, it depends on where those stem cells came from.
Okay.
So embryonic stem cells that came from IVF embryos,
Yeah.
they will have a different genetic makeup than the patient.
Right.
So they're more likely to trigger that immune response.
Okay.
And in those cases, the patient would most likely have to take immunosuppressant drugs to prevent their body from rejecting those cells.
So are there any ways to get around this?
Yeah, there are ways to generate stem cells that match the patient's DNA perfectly.
Whoa, how do they do that?
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
There are two main techniques.
Okay.
Somatic cell nuclear transfer,
Okay.
or SCNT,
Got it.
and induced pluripotent stem cell technology, or IPS.
Oh, IPS.
Both of those techniques can create stem cells that are a perfect genetic match for the patient.
Wow, so you're basically creating a personalized therapy
Yes.
that's tailored to the patient's immune system.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that mean that those stem cells are like 100% guaranteed not to be attacked?
It greatly reduces the risk of rejection,
Okay.
but there's still a chance that the immune system might attack them even if they're a perfect match.
Really?
Think about cancer cells for a second.
Okay.
They have the same DNA as the surrounding tissues,
Right.
but the immune system will still often attack and destroy them.
I see.
So it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's not just about a perfect genetic match.
Sure.
There are other factors involved,
Right.
and researchers are still working to understand all the ways that the immune system could attack those transplanted cells.
Fascinating. What are some of the other big challenges that researchers are trying to overcome?
One of the biggest is actually figuring out how to create the right environment to grow those stem cells in,
Oh, okay.
to make sure that they're safe and effective.
Yeah.
Scientists have to grow them under very specific and controlled conditions.
So it's like trying to recreate the perfect environment for a plant to grow.
Yes.
Like if you give it the right amount of light and water and nutrients, it'll thrive. But if you mess up even one of those factors, it won't do as well.
That's a great analogy.
Stem cells are picky.
They are, and it's really important for the stem cell therapies that are going to be used in people.
Okay.
So any stem cell therapy that is going into human trials has to be produced under what are called good manufacturing practice conditions.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It basically means that there are very strict standards in place to make sure that every single batch of cells is grown in exactly the same way in a perfectly clean environment.
Wow.
And following a super strict protocol,
Okay.
this guarantees that every batch of cells will have the same properties
Right.
and that every patient receives the same treatment.
Right.
And it also helps to prevent contamination,
Okay.
which is obviously super important because you're putting these cells into people.
Of course.
So it's really like following a very precise recipe for growing stem cells,
Yeah.
where every single thing has to be measured out exactly and documented perfectly.
Wow.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. But it's all about ensuring the safety and effectiveness of those therapies. I think it's really clear that developing these new stem cell therapies is both incredibly exciting, but also incredibly challenging.
Absolutely.
What do you think the future holds for this field?
I think it's really exciting to think about all that might be possible in the future with these stem cell therapies.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that,
Okay.
I'd be curious to get your take on everything we've covered so far.
Sure.
Like, what stood out to you the most?
I think what's really hit home for me is just the sheer scope of what stem cell research could achieve.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about repairing damaged tissues, creating new drugs, and even personalizing those treatments to avoid rejection by the immune system.
Right.
It feels like stem cell research has the potential to touch like every single area of medicine.
It really does. And I think what's so exciting is that we're just at the very beginning of all of this.
Right.
There's so much more to discover and understand about stem cells and their potential.
Yeah. And as we keep uncovering those possibilities, we also need to remember the challenges that come with actually making those possibilities a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just talking about how tricky it can be to get stem cells to become the very specific types of cells that are needed for different therapies.
Right.
It's kind of like trying to coax a single seed into growing into a very particular plant.
Yeah.
Whether it's a giant redwood tree or a delicate orchid, there are so many factors that have to be perfect.
It's true.
What are some of the strategies that researchers are using right now to guide stem cell development?
So one approach is to basically try to copy what happens in nature.
Okay.
Researchers are working to identify and reproduce the exact signals and growth factors that guide stem cell differentiation during embryonic development.
So they're kind of like decoding nature's own cellular programming language.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. What else are they working on?
Another approach uses biomaterials and 3D structures to try to mimic the environment inside the body where those stem cells would naturally differentiate.
Right.
So basically providing those cells with the structural cues and signals that help them develop into the right cell type.
So it's like giving them like a little blueprint or scaffold to follow.
Exactly. One really cool example of this is scientists are using 3D printing now to create scaffolds that actually mimic the bone marrow environment.
Wow.
And this has been shown to dramatically improve the differentiation of stem cells that are being used to treat blood diseases.
Wow.
So it's a huge deal for leukemia research, for example.
That's incredible. Earlier, we were also talking about immune rejection
Yeah.
and how even if you use a patient's own cells for therapy, there's still a chance that their immune system might attack those cells.
Right.
What are researchers doing to try to minimize that risk?
Well, one really promising avenue is to kind of shift the focus to the immune system itself
Okay.
and find ways to make it less likely to attack those transplanted cells.
Okay, how are they doing that?
There are a few different ways. One is to use immunosuppressant drugs like they do with organ transplants. But researchers are also looking at more targeted approaches, like
Okay.
finding ways to induce immune tolerance to those transplanted cells,
Okay.
or even engineering the cells themselves so that they can actually evade the immune system altogether.
So you're basically talking about creating a kind of like cellular stealth technology
Exactly.
that allows those transplanted cells to kind of slip past the immune system unnoticed.
That's a great way to put it.
That's amazing. Are there other strategies that they're using?
Yeah. Another strategy is to encapsulate the transplanted cells in a protective barrier
Okay.
that basically shields them from the immune system.
Interesting.
These barriers are made from biocompatible materials
Okay.
that allow things like nutrients and oxygen to get to the cells,
Right.
but they block those immune cells from actually attacking them.
So it's like building a tiny little fortress around those cells to protect them
Exactly.
while they do their job.
That's right.
That's so cool. And these are just a few of the ways that researchers are addressing these challenges with immune rejection.
Yeah, stem cell research is just such a fast-moving field.
Right.
What are some of the key areas that you think will see the most progress in the next 5 to 10 years?
It honestly feels like the possibilities are almost limitless with stem cells.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that researchers are focusing on right now?
One really important area is developing better, more reliable methods for generating and differentiating those stem cells.
Okay.
We've talked about how coaxing stem cells into becoming those specific cell types can be such a long and complicated process.
Right.
So researchers are really working hard to streamline that process,
Okay.
to make it more efficient, easier to scale up, and more affordable.
Makes sense to make the whole process as easy and cost-effective as possible.
Yes, definitely.
So these therapies could eventually be available to more people.
Exactly.
Okay. What else is kind of on the horizon for stem cell research?
Another key area is figuring out how to effectively deliver those stem cells to the right place in the body. You know, in a lot of cases, simply injecting the cells into the bloodstream isn't enough to make sure they reach that target tissue or organ.
Makes sense.
So researchers are exploring all kinds of new ways to deliver those stem cells, like using biomaterials, nanoparticles, and even genetically modified cells to try to improve that targeted delivery.
So like creating a super precise GPS system for the cells.
Exactly.
To guide them to exactly where they need to go.
That's a great way to think about it.
That's really amazing what other challenges are researchers going to have to overcome.
One of the biggest ones is really understanding the long-term effects of these stem cell therapies.
Oh, okay.
You know, while a lot of early studies have shown some really promising results, we really need to follow patients for a long time to make sure that these treatments are truly safe.
Of course.
And that the benefits are lasting. And that requires a lot of collaboration between researchers, doctors, and regulatory agencies to collect data, adjust treatment plans as needed, and address any risks or complications that might arise.
It's a huge undertaking.
And it is.
It's a good reminder that even though we need to be super excited about the potential of these stem cell therapies, we also need to proceed with caution. And do the research carefully.
Absolutely.
To ensure both the short-term effectiveness and long-term safety.
Definitely.
This has been such a fascinating conversation.
It has.
What are your kind of final thoughts on the potential of stem cells to, like, really change the future of medicine?
I think it's amazing to think about what the future might hold. Imagine a world where we can repair damaged hearts, regenerate spinal cords, even reverse the effects of aging using stem cell therapies.
Wow.
It's really incredible, and we've made such amazing progress in stem cell research over the past few decades. I'm so incredibly optimistic about the future of this groundbreaking field.
It's really inspiring to think about all the ways that stem cell research could transform our health and well-being. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listener about stem cell research or about where they can learn more about this fascinating field?
Absolutely. If anyone wants to learn more about stem cell research, I would definitely recommend checking out the websites of reputable organizations like the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine.
CRM?
CRM, exactly. The International Society for Stem Cell Research.
Okay.
Or ADSSCR, and the National Institutes of Health, or NIH.
Okay.
These organizations offer a wealth of information about stem cells, current research, clinical trials, all of that good stuff.
Those are excellent resources, and I would just add that it's crucial to be really discerning when it comes to information about stem cell therapies.
Absolutely.
So always talk to your doctor or a qualified healthcare professional. And be wary of clinics that are promising those miracle cures or treatments that just haven't been proven yet.
That's great advice. Stem cell research is a really complex field.
And it's so important to stay informed with accurate information from credible sources.
Agreed. Well, this has been a truly amazing deep dive into the world of stem cells.
It has.
What an incredible journey. But before we go, I think we have time for one more question. So we've talked a lot about the science and the challenges of stem cell research. But I kind of want to zoom out a little bit, What about the bigger picture? How could these therapies, if they do become widely available, how could they change the way we think about, like, health and disease and even how long we live?
That's such a great question. Because stem cell research really has the potential to change everything. Not just medicine, but like our whole understanding of what it means to be human.
Wow.
Imagine a future where age-related diseases are like a distant memory. Where damaged organs can be repaired or even replaced. And where the human lifespan is like significantly longer than it is now.
It's exciting, but also kind of a lot to wrap your head around.
It feels like we're like right on the cusp of this new era in medicine. Where the limits of human potential could be pushed even further.
Absolutely. And with that kind of power comes a responsibility to use it wisely and ethically.
Of course.
We need to think about the impact these advancements will have on society as a whole. And have these open and honest conversations about how they're going to change our lives.
It's a call to action for all of us, to really engage in these discussions and help shape the future of this field.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has been such a wild ride.
It has.
Filled with mind-blowing science and questions that really make you think.
It's true.
I want to give a huge thank you to CIRM for all the incredible work they're doing in this area. Their website is a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to dig deeper into all this.
Definitely.
And to our listener.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on this epic journey into the world of stem cells.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep those questions coming. Keep exploring and never stop learning.